Back in the 1980s, in the small town where I lived, there wasn't really much to do. A group of us kids kind of formed, and we would make our own adventures every weekend. I was around 15, and at the time, the 7 other kids I hung out with were around the same age. One weekend, we all met up at a nature trail, just to walk up and joke around. As we were walking along the trail, somebody mentioned that there was an abandoned honor farm not far from where we were. We all thought it was a good idea to go there and check out this scary and mysterious abandoned building. We walked for about a mile when we reached it. I remember having a high school teacher who told us a story about a friend who had gone there. His friend was alone, and a short time after, he had toured the scary old building. He walked outside only to be met by 3 Doberman pinchers. My teacher said that the dogs were snarling at his friend, and he decided that his only option was to run away as fast as he could. The dogs chased him to the fenced area, where he proceeded to climb over the fence. When he found himself safely on the other side of the fence, he heckled the dogs that had chased him. Suddenly, the dogs stopped barking and growling, and they looked at the fence in a way that was methodical. They approached the fence and began literally climbing it. They used their legs as they climbed the fence, in the same way a person would. His friend ran away as fast as he could, and the dogs never caught up to him. This story had left me with a real curiosity about the place, so I was excited to go. We arrived at the notorious building, and we all ran inside and split up as we explored this crazy building. Myself and my very best friend decided to head up a concrete stairway to the second floor, where we walked in and out of the old abandoned rooms that were filled with traces of the past. There was graffiti splattered all over the walls, so we knew that many others had also been exploring and damaging everything in sight. We came to this room that was completely dark, and we stood outside of the doorway, too afraid to go in. At this point, 2 guys from the group showed up, and we dared them to go in. One of the guys looked at us and rolled his eyes, and just walked into the room as he felt along the wall to guide him. He was in the room for what seemed like very long minutes. Suddenly, he jumped out with a scary boo as we all jumped backwards and then laughed at what he had done. At that moment, he looked down at his hands and they were covered in what looked like blood. "It's probably red paint," I said, as I saw the fear in his eyes. "Let's get back down to the first floor." All 4 of us ran down the stairs, and we met the others in the hallway right off the staircase. One of the guys in the group was a joker. We all told him about the red gunk on the guy's hand from that room on the second floor, and he started to joke about it as we all laughed at his explanations. As everyone was standing there, listening to this guy joke around, I turned towards the main foyer that was just feet away from where we were standing. As I looked, I suddenly saw a man walking through the foyer. He walked at an angle, sort of left to right with confident strides. He was very tall, and he didn't even turn to look at us. He was wearing a long overcoat that had a hood that was pulled over his head. He was well dressed and was wearing nice shoes. I don't know why I remember his shoes, but I took a note of it. He just walked from where I could see him, and then he was out of my view. I interrupted the guy that was talking and told him what I had seen. Everyone looked in that direction, but nobody could see the man. We all decided that we should leave and start heading back to the area where we had all been dropped off by our parents. As we walked, we forgot all about the possible blood on the guy's hand and the man that I had just seen, and we just joked around having fun as we walked. That night, I spent the night at my friend's house. They had this rabbit pen in their backyard with several adorable rabbits that my friend's mother had taken in and fed after they were abandoned as babies. The next morning, we got up and went into the kitchen, where my friend's dad told us not to go out in the backyard. We pressed him as to why we couldn't go out there, and he told us that somebody had come into their yard that night and cut off the heads of all the rabbits. He said that the strangest part was that there was no blood at all. It was almost as if someone drank the blood right after chopping their heads off. Right away, I knew that somebody had followed us from the honor farm, and that same person, or whatever it was, had killed the rabbits. Something was seriously up with that place. It has since been torn down, and nothing remains of that old building. There were so many scary stories coming out about the place that the city decided to level it. There is even a movie that was made about it called The Honor Farm a few years back. People may not think that the evil is real, but I assure everyone it is. I graduated high school almost a year ago. I had really no urge to attend college or the military and basically got stuck in my boring hometown for months, where I slowly became dependent on Xanax and booze and was destined to repeat the cycle of my white trash set before me and by my parents and theirs before me. I knew I had to leave town, so I decided to sign up for a website. You may have heard of it, called wolf.com, Worldwide Opportunities in Organic Farming. You pay a small fee, and they make available a directory of organic farming operations that will feed you and allow you to live with them in return for a certain amount of work around the farm. The place I decided to commit to was a Hare Krishna community in the deep south. I got there, and my car almost immediately broke down. It was a 30-year-old Chevy Blazer I bought on Craigslist for $500. Later on, I was to find out it was beyond repair at this point. The closest town was almost 20 miles away, so I found myself stranded and surrounded by the most unbearable hipsters. To be more specific, I'd say about a third of the population of the community were either first or second generation Indian immigrants living near the temple for religious reasons. Another demographic were aging hippies also there for spiritual purposes, but also running the small-scale organic farm located on the property. Everyone else, however, was self-absorbed, condescending, and right out of college but vapid as crap hipsters. I basically kept to myself, but occasionally was forced into conversation about vibrating crystals and their 3-year spiritual journey, no doubt being funded by their parents. I had been there for weeks and was desperate for a real conversation, and then Michael showed up. I had heard stories about Michael a couple of days before I showed up. He had left to retrieve an impounded car in a large city, about an hour away. Everyone said he was lazy, insane, and would spend hours up in his room doing yoga instead of coming down and working with the rest of us. He showed up late in the evening, going on about how he's going to really get involved with the farming and throw himself into Krishna consciousness. He was in his early 30s. He looked like a balding Hasidic Jew. His unwashed sideburns curled. He spoke like a stoner cartoon character, his sentences punctuated with and, or, and like, giving his utterly fried brain time to figure out what others wanted to hear. He reminded me of many other of the friends I left back home. We became fast friends, as he was the only person there who didn't give me the urge to bite my fingers off when he spoke. We were both from Texas, so we talked about the loony conservative teachers we had in high school, football, and of course drugs. Every now and then, he brought up subjects that really sort of threw me off. He wasn't able to get his car out of the impound garage, so he schemed the best way to break it out. These plans involved firearms, pipe bombs, and telepathy. He told me he came to Hare Krishna temple to befriend some of the gurus and learn Rikiki meditation, a form of meditation used to control the minds and bodies of other people. He told me he believed he had used Rikiki once to seduce a woman at a party. This is when I understood his reputation. I simply nodded and laughed occasionally when he went off on these rants. I knew that one day I would reach a saturation point for this absurdity, but I could probably endure a week more. A couple days later, we were eating lunch with one of the gurus. I was telling Michael about my trip to a giant field where the branch dividing used to be. He wasn't sure what the branch dividing was, so I explained to him about the Waco, David Koresh, and the botched siege by the FBI that led to the death of 76 Davidans and 4 ATF agents. He was enraged. The government is always trying to silence people preaching the truth. That's so messed up. I wanted to explain to him that David Koresh was a psychopathic cult leader, interested in power and nothing else, but he wasn't having it. Now I was angry. He was having a tantrum about a subject, and I had just explained to him, and now he's telling me I'm wrong and that Koresh was a meritor. This is when I saw the truly insane Michael. He was spitting, red as a beet, pacing back and forth. I left the table and got back to work while he followed me. After half an hour of this absurd argument, I couldn't handle it anymore. I'm not having this conversation with the loon, Michael. How can I expect logic from you? You "You come here to get superpowers." The look in his eyes changed from anger to hatred. He got real still and went at me. Michael was a big guy, much bigger than me. He lunged at me, and I ran. As I ran, I went through my pocket, praying I had grabbed my knife before I left my cabin. I know it sounds ridiculous, but you don't walk my old neighborhood without some sort of protection. Plus, it was pretty useful too on the farm. Luckily, I had grabbed it and turned around so he saw it. He stopped and contemplated for 3 seconds. He quickly turned around and finished his lunch. The next day, he pulled the temple president aside and explained what happened and that we had to get rid of him. It didn't take much convincing. No one really cared for him, and he wasn't much help on the farm. I felt bad snitching on the guy. He was in a pretty desperate situation. He had no car, no money, and I can't imagine he had many friends. The temple president also informed me that he had been an alcoholic for 10 years and had come here to get sober. I found it very strange. He never told me this. Later that day, I saw through my window someone drive up and hand him several suitcases to pack what little he had, and I saw them both drive off to God knows where. Weeks went by, and the whole encounter kind of faded from my consciousness. Late one night, I got a text. "Hey, this is Michael. We can get my car off for $280. Want to go traveling?" I never responded. I wasn't sure how he got my number, but I figured he looked me up on Facebook or something. A few nights later, I was in the temple office using the Wi-Fi to make some emails. I was making the walk back to my cabin, and from the pitch black, I heard a lot of loud banging coming from a barn. I remember thinking it must have been an animal, but also thinking it must be a pretty big one to make that much noise. I entered the cabin. The actual door to the cabin doesn't have a lock, but my bedroom did, so I used that one. I was pretty unsettled by the banging, but I figured my imagination getting the best of me. Later that night, I woke up needing to take a piss. The cabin didn't have a bathroom, but we had a shared outhouse. I didn't feel like putting on shoes and walking around in the dark, so I figured I'd just piss in the sink. I know it's gross, but I'm the only one using that kitchen. I opened my bedroom door and nearly pissed myself right there. Michael, completely naked, was crouching in a corner of my kitchen, facing the wall. I made a noise I wasn't aware I could make, something you would only hear Shaggy make on Scooby-Doo. This noise alerted Michael to my entrance. All he did was glare at me and shook his whole body. I slammed my door and locked it almost immediately. I knew what he was trying to do. He was trying to pacify me with the Rikiki meditation. I called 911. I didn't open my door or even approach it until I saw the red and blue lights outside my window. Michael wasn't there when they arrived. My guess is he ran deep into the woods that surrounded the farm. I explained me and Michael's history and what had happened that night. There wasn't much they could do since no one seemed to know anything about Michael. I didn't even know his last name. I had to leave the farm shortly after. Calling the police was really frowned upon, since I believe many of the old hippies thought they were still avoiding the draft. I didn't mind leaving either. I couldn't sleep knowing Michael might be out in those woods, angrier than he was before. I stayed up almost 3 days while I waited for my friend to come pick me up.